This one is 20 years old.
It's 20 years old, and it has a considerably higher alcohol content, which tells you something about how it was matured, the conditions in which it was matured. It has lost less alcohol in proportion to the water that it has lost in evaporation. So it has stayed much stronger.
We look at Lagavulin, yet not the 16, not the 12 cask strength.
Right.
We look at Lagavulin Distiller's Edition, and we're looking at a Kalila Distiller's Edition. What about this?
Okay, big differences. Well, we know you've seen, I hope, the chapter. What do you call them on your website?
The segment.
The segment on Lagavulin and Kalila. That's in the smoke segment that I do with Talisker and these two. But in these cases, remember, Lagavulin is always bourbon and sherry cask in its initial maturation, the first 16 years. In this case, they've taken those married casks and they've put them into Pedro Jimenez, very rich, very heavy sherry casks from Spain. And the result is a magnificent, rich, chewy, huge notes of smoke with giant notes of cooked, rich fruits and jammy, almost syrupy quality. It's fantastic.
Is this what it means here? Because I see PX.
That's it.
Okay.
That's Pedro Jimenez. That's
But
Pedro
now
Jimenez.
it also says distilled 1995, bottled 2011. Every year will be a different expression?
Yes, because, not because there's this big intent, oh, we're going to change this, there might be, because it might have a different distiller, but because they have a different set of casks. They're getting these casks in lots for a bottling that is going to be released at a certain time. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, I mean, you've met a few of these, right? A few of these distillers editions from Diageo. They're not the same all the time. They're not like regular bottlings. They're.
So what does it say to your Lagavulin 16 drinker? Because you know how they are.
Yes. Well, one, your Lagavulin 16 is going to be fine. It's not going to change at all. It's always going to be Lagavulin 16 forever and ever and ever and ever. But if you would like to try something exotic based on something that you love, Lagavulin Distiller's Edition, and in a year or so, there'll be another one, and it will be a little bit different. And in a year or so, it'll be a little bit different.
Do you do this for each?
I collect them. I have 3 or 4 of these.
I bet you do.
I have 3 or 4 Crag & Moors. I have 3 or 4. Oh, yes, I love to collect them.
And then I wonder why, when I place an order,
they're
all gone.
It's all at my house.
So every year there's a different one. But is it true for Oban? Is it true for Kalila?
Yes.
Is it true for all of them? Do we have a Crag & Moor? Do we have a Dalwhinnie?
All of these are done. All of these are done yearly as distillers' editions in casks.
Since when?
And since it was done in a much smaller, it's getting bigger now, but since about 10 years ago. It's been about 10 years they've been doing this.
It's lovely.
I mean, I had a big debate with with a malt maniac not long ago, who shall go unmentioned in this, but he's the New York malt maniac, and
he's a wonderful guy.
And he's a wonderful guy. But we had a 92 Crag & Moor, to talk about a completely different whiskey, and we had a 2000 something Crag & Moor that I brought over to his house, and we compared them, and they were wildly different.
Well, the first Crag & Moor that we got here as a distiller's edition, so what was that, 5 years ago probably?
5 years ago, yeah.
Was absolutely, I thought, magnificent.
Yeah, previous to that, remember, they were almost all duty-free.
But what's different? It's just a question of maturation then. Is it a different finish? Because you call them double matured.
Wow, that's a good whiskey.
He's having a moment.
Oh my gosh. I just want to tell you what I just experienced was this incredibly soft, absolutely no knees and elbows going down, soft, 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 rich, sweet, what I call perfect porridge of sweet and salt together. Gorgeous smoke, not nearly as big as the 16-year-old smoke, by the way. Not nearly as big, considerably smaller on the palate. What we have with these additions, with all the distiller's additions from Diageo, they've taken the initial bottling that you know, sometimes at the year and sometimes a year previous, so that it will end up being the same number of years, generally not a lot more years, generally about the same age spirit, and put it into a different cask. In the case of the Lagavulin, this Lagavulin, it's a Pedro Jimenez cask, a heavy sherry cask. In the case of this Caol Ila we're going to get to, it's a Moscatel cask, which is different yet. In the case of Oban Distiller's Edition, it's a Montilla Fino, a very much lighter cask. But think of Oban. Could Oban handle a Pedro Jimenez cask? I don't know that it could. It could get beat up by that. See what I mean? You have to fit them to the right. Glenkinchie, which is a lowland, goes into an Amontillado cask. See what I mean? So fit the cask to the strength of the whiskey. Don't put a light whiskey into a heavy sherry cask and beat it up. Give it something that it'll have a chance in. Talisker goes into an Amoroso sherry cask. I didn't know what Amoroso sherry was. I had to look it up because I'd never run into it. It's a fortified sherry cask. And apparently very sweet, loaded, sweet, sweet, sweet. And Talisker comes out of that just fat and sassy, which you'd never think of Talisker as fat and sassy, but it's fat and sassy, and Talisker all the way. But that's because Talisker is enormous, and Talisker can do that.
Spike.
Yep.
Life is tough. But
It's
when
brutal.
life is tough, come, don't ruin. I'm trying to.
Okay, I'm sorry.
I'm trying to make it sound like it's difficult.
Life is tough.
If we go back. Oh my.
Is this the Alcroix?
Oh, good God.
Wow.
I'm on Glen Spey.
Oh,
I
yes.
start when my chef, executive chef, Labou, here in the kitchen, makes his caramel candies. When he starts, after about 10-15 minutes of that caramel in the making, this is it. The kitchen smells like it.
Is that coconut a knockout or what?
That reminds me of our chef.
Quick note here, folks, by the way. With the older the whiskey, and this is a general rule, and Flavien will agree with me on this. Remember, when you come into an establishment like this, where you can order 25 and 30-year-old whiskeys, that age has meant, and I can go into a whole chemical explanation of how this happens in the cask and how ester molecules are built, etc., etc. But as it breathes in the glass, it's going to open and it's going to be transforming all the time. And over a period of a very long period, over a period of an hour, this is a dynamic thing is going to be happening. You're going to get different notes, different notes, different notes, different notes. The first time I met Flavien, he's not going to remember this. I walked in here before I think I even introduced myself to him.
Was he sober?
Ish. It was an evening. But you were walking around with a snifter with something in it. And you passed me a few times, at least in an hour, and you had the same thing. And I said, I know you've been nosing that for a while. How does it taste? And you said, well, I haven't tasted it yet. And I thought, brother. Immediately, I think that's when I introduced myself to you. I said, okay, he's safe. I can talk to him. This is something I would do. He had picked something rare, probably, and you were letting it open and letting it change.
This Oxhusk smells like red wine now to me.
Wow.
When this almost picks up some spicy rye whiskey character now.
In fact,
Oh,
this sounds crazy, but I was in a bar last night.
but you're crazy.
I was in a bar last night. What are the chances?
Well, we expect you to be in a bar last night.
And over on the east side, and a
Hold on,
bartender.
Did you visit other places?
I occasionally will go to other places
All right.
that are not necessarily Brandy Library. And this bartender, who you actually know, was making a cocktail for me with bullet rye.
Okay.
And
Good idea.
that's what it smelled like.
It smells like it.
That's just amazing. That's amazing.
Wow.
That's gorgeous.
Such a complexity.
So don't rush. I don't know, a good note is don't rush your consumption of these spirits. Drink them slowly and consistently.
Oh, I like that.
That doesn't mean stop. That
No,
means
I like that
just
anyway.
keep going. But these are beauties.